Back for part two of our wrap-up of the governor's trade mission to the People's Republic of China. One of the men on that trip, the man, the myth, the legend, Lew Cramer. He's the president and CEO of World Trade Center Utah. Before we broke, we were talking a little bit about what does an MOU really do for businesses, and I want to get a sense of what the real opportunities are for Utah businesses from this trip. Is this all about us exporting more or more tourism opportunities for these companies, for people in China to come here? What really is the result of all this?
Well, the answers are yes, yes, and yes, Marty, because there's a whole range of economic developments that are encompassed in a trade relationship. Clearly, we know how to import from China. We're doing a lot of that already in Utah, and that helps keep our cost of living a little lower, but it doesn't create jobs like exports do. So Utah exports mean Utah jobs to China. So we'd obviously like to export some of our manufactured goods, but in addition, we had Rich Nelson, who is a terrific CEO of the Utah Technology Council, which represents the 5,500 high-tech companies in the state. Mm-hmm. That's our fastest growing area of exports in medical devices, information technology products, and other things. He was besieged by people who want to talk with him about doing deals, opportunities, collaborations, partnerships, whatever it is, agents, distributorships with Utah high-tech companies. And I would be hard-pressed to ask you, can you name a Chinese worldwide brand?
Well, I don't know if I could.
See, the Chinese don't have, I mean, Japanese have lots of brands, the Koreans have brands, yeah. The Chinese don't have brands. Partly that's because of the management skills and other things. They want to learn that from Utah companies. They want to get things that can be branded dramatically. And so that's part of the equation. In addition to exports, imports, there's also foreign direct investment. The Chinese are accumulating $2 billion of foreign reserves every day. That's adult money. They want to invest that somewhere. And they all know where LA is. They've heard of New York and other areas. But the second-tier cities, like Salt Lake, are a dramatic opportunity for them in investments. And that's the other thing we pursued pretty dramatically as well.
One thing the Chinese have imported from the United States is probably our love for professional sports. And I think that the Utah Jazz played a little bit of a role in, well, certainly you'd have to say people know the Jazz, recognize the Jazz, and that's a good icebreaker.
That is a great question. In fact, when the governor said, what kind of gifts should I give to the mayor of Shanghai or the mayor of Wuhan, we said, the best thing that you could possibly do is something from the Utah Jazz. And so Greg Miller and Randy Rigby graciously donated 4 or 5 autographed basketballs. They said, we got a real bargain on Darren Williams jerseys, but we said, that's okay. They know that Darren's no longer with the Jazz. And in fact, I said to them, to the Jazz leadership, I said, thank you so much for this. Is there anything we can do for you? And they said, just bring us back a 7-footer that can shoot. So we looked for a 7-footer. We haven't quite got that trade negotiation taken care of. But we ran into a lot of people, and the first thing they said about Utah was Utah Jazz. We drove through the streets of downtown Beijing, you know, the most expensive real estate in China, basketball courts out there. Go through the Forbidden City, basketball courts. The Utah Jazz and what Greg Miller and the Miller family has done is just a superb outreach to the rest of the world.
Tourism, a big thing, obviously a big part of this trip. Beijing and Salt Lake City share an Olympic legacy. They've hosted the Summer Games. We, of course, hosted the Winter Games in 2002. Is there a connection there because of our shared Olympic heritage? And do they recognize that we have the greatest snow on Earth? And is that part of the draw, get more of these tourists to come visit?
We would love to have more of these tourists. The Chinese say that in the next several years, 100 million Chinese are going to be traveling. But Utah is still, I mean, the Jazz are well known. They know something about the Grand Canyon. They know we're kind of close to Las Vegas. But they don't know enough about the greatest snow on Earth, about the Red Rocks, about Moab, about other things and so Lee Vonderesh, who's doing a terrific job as the head of the Utah Tourism Bureau, participated in a trade show while we were there, and Governor Herbert, to a standing room audience, talked about why Utah, and we had a booth there at this show. It was really great, and particularly the booth next to us was Tunisia. Tunisia, Utah, I mean, I think it's easy to choose it. Come to Utah. So we see a lot of opportunity there, and that should be a growth area.
Do you have any idea how often other cities, other states, other governors make trade mission trips like this?
A lot.
I mean,
a lot.
Do we have to do more of this to keep pace? Is our one voice every couple of years enough to kind of keep us fresh in their minds? What's the pace? What should it be?
You know, that's an excellent question, because while we were there, we didn't get some time with some people because there were 5 other states with trade missions there the week we were there. The president of Brazil was there the week we were there. There is a non-ending stream of visitors to China because that's where the money is, that's where the opportunities are. And you can't just kind of do this drive-by shooting visit once every 2 years and figure that you've got these relationships built up. You need to develop that, and that's the 3 feet. And the governor doesn't need to go every time, but companies need to go every time. So that we're going to do more of that going forward.
We talk a lot about how we're now competing on a global stage, that the world is flat type of a deal.
Right.
Did you get a sense for China's investment in education? And is there anything from that that Utah can learn and implement so that we can not only keep pace with our competition, but hopefully beat our competition?
Well, the competition is there. We have no idea how dramatically focused the Chinese are on education. That's why they're the largest number of foreign students in America now. It's above 170,000 from China are here because they see the advantages of a higher education opportunity in China. However, they're studying hard. President Matt Holland of Utah Valley University went by Shanghai Normal University, which is a teacher training institution, very well known there, and we talked at length about what kind of collaborations make sense. And I had brochures in Mandarin about Utah, and I started handing out to one of the professors that was in the high-level meeting, and the professor said, "Oh, I don't need that. I went to the University of Utah." And a fellow next to me said, "Well, I went to BYU," and the Chinese lady just kind of sniffed, and the BYU guy says, "You really did go to the University of Utah." They know us. They want to learn from us, but we are learning. We walked some classrooms, and people were studying, and I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but President Holland said, "I wish more of my students would study like this after class." So there's no question that they're on academic steroids going forward.
And of course, it also ties into other things like immigration policy, where these people who've come and been educated at our universities, and now they're off helping the competition rather than fostering growth here. And
so it's an inappropriate immigration policy that we have in that regard. No question about it.
We have another trade group right now that's down in, at least while we're taping this, depends on when you're watching this, I suppose. We have a group down in Monterey, just a group of business leaders, didn't take the governor or anything, but down supporting Real Salt Lake. So again, you see, you see the tie between sports, professional sports, and economic development. How important is it that we do this type of thing, not just with China, but make these connections with key partners?
I think it's highly important. In this global world, we're looking at 86% of the growth in the next 10 years coming outside of the United States, and 60% of the growth coming outside of North America, Europe, and Japan. So the opportunities are in the emerging markets, whether it's sports, culture, dance, whatever it is. We need to have, as I like to say, and as you often say, international trade is a contact sport. You have to be out there making those contacts. You can do a lot on the internet more than ever. You can do a lot on just short trade missions. At the end of the day, you have to say, I'm committed to making international work for me, because that's where the growth opportunities for me, my company, and my children are going to be. So it's important that we get that kind of mindset in this state.
Utah exports have doubled over the past 5 years. We have a goal set to do that again over the next 5. That's going to require more Utah businesses thinking outside of our nation's borders.
Right.
Give me a quick pitch as to why, if I have a company that sells widgets or markets widgets or whatever, that I should be thinking China.
Well, not only did we double exports in the last 5 years, but you may not know, Marty, but we were the only state in the nation to double exports the last 5 years. And the reason why it makes sense to go outside our borders is that's where the purchasing power is, that's where the potential partners are, and that's also where our children, posterity, are going to have to be competitive going forward. You might as well, and you're happy to learn in Canada or Mexico. Those are good places to start. If you're already there, look at China. I wouldn't necessarily say China has to be your first export opportunity. You may want to get warmed up on some of these neighbors next door that, it's like shipping to Detroit, shipping to Canada's, across a bridge from them. But ultimately, you have to look at China because of the sheer weight and resources that they have as well.
Lew Cramer is the president and CEO of World Trade Center Utah. He is a globe-trotting gentleman and has been to China with the governor very recently. So, Lew, we thank you for your time and appreciate the update on the China trade mission.
Well, let me just thank the Salt Lake Chamber for being a terrific strategic partner. There's nobody better in this state to make things happen than the Salt Lake Chamber. So thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Lew.